The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, everybody, how are you doing? My name is James Cochran. I am the Farmers Market Support Program Manager for Community Farm Alliance. And this webinar is for markets in our cost share programs. We do require crowd counting this year as part of the data we need markets to collect in their the signed MOUs that you've submitted to us for funding for Market Manager and Double Dollars. So we wanted to share a quick webinar with you about some of the methods at your disposal and some of the recommendations that we have for you to consider as you develop this mindset, this strategy to benefit your market, as well as give us the data that we need for our own funding partners. So the first thing that we need to talk about is why we require it. So, well, number one, the most important thing to think about is what it does for your market. This kind of data is the kind of data that you can use to make really educated and smart decisions for your market, whether it be bringing in new vendors, or finding the kind of vendors that you know need your customer base is looking for. You can also use this information to secure your own funding in the future, should the Farmers Market Support Program funding ever run out, or your needs exceed what we can offer individual markets. So this is a really good target goal for markets that are looking to grow and become a sustainable community space for their area. So the reasons that we need it specifically are for the FMPP grant that pays for the Farmers Market Support Program, and specifically our staff, the technical assistant staff. It pays for the mini grants. Many of you have applied for those. And it also pays for some of the workshops and the webinars like this one. And we need the crowd counts for as a data point to prove that the work that we're doing is benefiting the markets in the state. So, and the same goes for our Ag Development Fund funding, which pays for Double Dollars SNAP, meat, eggs, and dairy, the WIC, Double Dollars WIC, and the Double Dollars Senior Voucher Program, as well as our cost share. And then the FINI grant, which pays for the Double Dollars SNAP fruit and veggie portion of our Double Dollars program. So all of those folks need measurables from us proving that the work that we're doing is benefiting the communities that we are serving. So that's why we need it. So it's not the only reason to get it. They're really useful tools. It's a really useful tool for a couple of other things. It can help you figure out sales estimates for the year or for the day. It can help you figure out if where your advertising is making a difference, if you're seeing a net growth. Say, for example, on opening day last year versus this year, if you made a big push with any advertising, you can see if there was any growth. And you can use that data to decide whether or not the advertising that you did made a difference. So it can really inform your strategizing in the future. It can also help with understanding what happens when, say, the county fair is happening nearby and the market is, let's say, for example, the market is not going to be, is still opening, but the county fair, is 5 miles down the road. You can see what kind of impact that has and really put hard numbers to it. And then you can use that as maybe a negotiation or a way to partner with the county fair in the future. There are lots of angles to it. The bottom line is the data is really, really useful. And And some of the really useful things that I think market managers should consider putting into their own work plans is taking crowd counts and the estimated sales every week and issuing an average sale per customer estimate to all vendors. That gives them an idea of what they should be shooting for, and it gives them an idea of possibly what share of the total sales are, and it helps them understand helps vendors understand any changes or adaptations they might need to make to their own business, to maybe secure a bigger portion of that average sale per customer. All of these things are net positives for the market. You want vendors that are innovating and trying new things. So give them the tools to do so. The bottom line, the most important thing that I think you should consider, or you need to think about for this, is that this habit, you don't have to have all of these uses yet. You don't have to tomorrow. You don't have to have all of these common uses ready to go. If you develop the habit first and you work that into your workflow, it takes a few minutes every hour or so. You can then work this into your schedule somehow. You don't have to do every single thing at the end of the year. You can develop and implement pieces of this so that you are inching closer to the bigger picture value, the ultimate value of it. But you don't necessarily have to do all of this right away and then burn yourself out because you just don't have the time or capacity. Start the habit, figure out where it works, how it works, and what it takes to make it consistent, and then pick a couple of these or one of them, implement that, see how it helps, see how it can be improved, or if there's any new techniques that you want to try, and then try a new thing. So just baby step your way to it. Constant improvement is a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. So I highly encourage all markets to think about it that way. Okay. All right. So we're going to go over 3 methods in this webinar. This presentation. And we're going to talk about some of the benefits and drawbacks to each of them. So the ones we're going to talk about are the full count, a hard count, a timed count, and a walk through or walk around count, and what the benefit and accuracy levels of each of them are. So, and then, but there are a couple other ones that I just want to mention before we move forward all the way. There's some really interesting things happening. I did a little bit of research about, and I have a call in with the fellow that makes this tool here. This is a Raspberry Pi. It's a $35 computer, and this is a Wi-Fi receiver that you can use while plugged in. You can inject this. Well, you can code this computer to count the number of smartphones that are in your market looking for a Wi-Fi signal at any given time, and you can use that as a pretty decent representation of your crowd counts over the course of the day. Which, I think, according to the article I found this on, this unit costs about $100 total. That's everything from the plugs and the peripherals to this piece, this Wi-Fi receiver piece, and the Raspberry Pi itself. So I'm gonna look into this more. I think it's really interesting, and I just wanted to sort of share it with you guys. I think it's really neat. There are some privacy concerns that people have brought to me and that I've seen be mentioned. The bottom line is that most phones now really change the ways that you can track a single phone through this method every day. So or more than once a day potentially. Depends on the kind of phone. So the bottom line is that if you set it up right, all you're looking for is how many times a piece of a single phone got within range of this Wi-Fi signal and was looking for a way to connect to a potential Wi-Fi network. That's it. So you're not getting any other information, no names, no numbers, not even, I think, I have to look into it more, but I don't think you even know what kind of phone it is. So, yeah, there's not a lot of potential to invade someone's privacy in that way. Anyway, I digress. It's a neat idea. And then there's some other ones. There's another idea that is counting cars as they enter a parking lot. So if you have a enclosed parking lot, one way in, one way out, you can count the number of cars going into the market. You can have a volunteer set up in front of the entrance, and just click away the number of cars that go in and out, or maybe just in. And that is a net. That's a really useful way of doing crowd counting too. So it's worth looking into if you have that. So here are the ones that we're going to talk about. Where are you? Okay. So the first one we're going to talk about is a full count. This is all hands on deck. Every entrance is covered. Everyone has a clicker, and they have a way to track the number, the way to log the count at the end of the day. And they are there from opening to closing. This is obviously the most resource intensive way to count, but it is also the most accurate way to get a full crowd count. There's going to be errors. People are going to miss one or two people, or they're going to double count. It's going to happen, but this is going to be the closest thing to 100% accurate as you're going to find among the three that we're going to talk about today. So if you have a volunteer program and you have the staff, this might be a good thing to do on occasion. Maybe you want to do it for a specific event. Let's say you're doing a concert series, like a one-off concert or a one-off fundraising kind of event, auction, whatever, covering all the entrances and exits with a crowd count, with a volunteer that's counting people going in, is a really useful tool to find out how successful, how many people came in, and all that stuff. So, it can be really useful and it doesn't need to be something you need to do all the time. If you wanted to do it all the time, there's no harm in that. I think, in fact, it would be very accurate and consistent, and really useful for some of the other, stuff that you can do with crowd counts. There are a lot, but there's also a lot of markets that don't have any way to stop people from coming in through the sides of the market, not necessarily the front, the sort of the quote front of the market or the entrance of the market. People like to come in from wherever they want. So it would take a couple of creative ways to do that if you wanted to do it. So think about getting some caution tape and some cones and trying to funnel people in. You may not be able to stop them from coming into all the, you may not be able to stop them from getting into all of the ways to get in, but maybe you can limit the number of ways that they can get in just through a little bit of inconvenience to the point where you need a fewer volunteers to cover the count. So it's just one of the ways to think about it. And that's the kind of the limit that we're going to go through there. It's a very accurate count, and it's worth looking into. But if it sounds impossible, you don't necessarily need to start there. It's worth looking into, probably for a one-off if you're just getting started with markets. But don't worry about that if it sounds impossible now. There are other ways to do it. The other one is something called the timed count. This is a pretty interesting method. It takes a small team as well. and it's sort of like the full count, but you're only doing it for portions of the day. So you'd still want to do some things like funnel people through specific entrances if you can, and you still want to have all the entrances covered, but you don't need to be there from, say, if your market's 9 to 1, you don't need someone at each entrance from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can you can just have volunteers that come in and do counts on an hourly basis. This is sort of the recommendation that I found. I have not done this myself, but it looks like a big improvement on the next version that we're going to talk about. But this is how it works typically. So you count. You want to have a team that covers every entrance, and then every hour every hour, say you want to wait a little bit after the sort of the main hour. So if the market starts at 9, you want to wait 10, 20, 30 minutes before you start the process. But you choose if you want how often you want to go into you want to do these counts. So you can do a session of starting at 9:20. You count for 20 minutes, and then you do that again at 10:20 and 11:20 and 12:20, and you record those numbers. For 9:20 you get, say, what did I say, 50 people for 20 minutes at one entrance. So that's one way to do it. And then the longer the time span, so if you want to do it for 20 minutes, that's decent. But if you want to do it for longer than that, it's even more accurate, obviously. So you're getting closer to a full count. So this is kind of like a hybrid from a full count to the next version that we're going to talk about. But the next thing you want to do, you want to have an idea of how long it takes someone to shop through your market. So if your market is, I don't know, 20 vendors, probably people are going to be there, 15, 20 minutes overall, maybe a little bit longer, but you'll have an idea of how long people stay at the market. And that's your base formula, or your base number that you want to multiply the length of time that you've been counting at each entrance for this timed count. So say your market runs for, say your average customer comes to the market for about 20 minutes and then leaves. You're going to take that 20 minute count and multiply it by 3, because that's 3 times 20 is 60 minutes. That's an hour. So that's your hourly count is 150 in this example. So we have people coming in. We have one entrance, one person standing at the entrance. They count for 20 minutes, and in those 20 minutes, at 9:20, from 9:20 to 9:40, they count 50 people coming in, and you take that number and you multiply it by 3 to get the full hour of 9 for the full hour at 9 o'clock, and that'll give you 150 people in attendance between 9 and 10 a.m. So you take that number and then you do it 3 more times, the 10:20, 11:20, and 12:20. You add those 4 numbers up, and you get your crowd count for the day. So here's my example: at 150 at 9 a.m., 200 at 10, 225 at 11, and 175 at 12. That'll give you 750 people for your crowd count for the day. So it's a little bit more accurate, a little bit less time consuming or time demanding than the full count, but it is a good thing to consider, and it also is also something you don't necessarily need to do every time. You can test it out as well. But the bottom line is, with markets in our program, we do need a crowd count, and I highly recommend you do it every day, every market day. It'll make a really big difference for your own estimates. And we'll get into more sort of suggestions. This is the recommendation that the Farmers Market Coalition sort of has for crowd counts. Um, and I think it's a good compromise between a fully accurate, full count and a recognition of the time constraints and the time demands that a full count demands. So the good news is you don't necessarily. So if you have a small team of volunteers, you only need them for a few minutes um, on the hour to do this kind of work. You don't necessarily need them to camp out at every entrance. So there's opportunities for them to do more than just that in this example. So the last one we're going to talk about is the walkthrough count. And it's the least intensive. You only need one person to do it. And a lot of the markets that we work with are that are of a size that can handle this kind of count with without a lot of issues. So, but the downside is that of the three that we're talking about today, it is the least accurate. Um, so but it is sort of what I recommend for markets where you're just getting started with crowd counting and um, the other option is nothing. So um, the important thing is that you just do it consistently. So the method is just like the timed count, you're going to have an idea of what the average shopper's time at the market is. And I typically the markets that I ran were about 20 to 30 minutes. It really depended on how big the market was. But so I use 20 minutes as an example all the time. So, but in this case, instead of having everyone set up at the entrances, you're just going to walk through the market and count every adult shopper you see um, on an hourly basis. And that can take, if you're a small market, that's only going to take 5 minutes max to just write down the number, count through 15. There's 30 people in the market today, or right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way through. Write down the number, multiply that by whatever it takes to get this number, this estimate average shopper's time at market to equal 60 minutes. So whatever that multiple is, and then you multiply that to get your crowd count for the hour. So you do that at 9. I think 9:20 makes sense for 9 a.m. to 9 to 1 at market. Or I think on the 20s makes sense for markets to do these counts at. So you do one at 9:20, 10:20, 11:20, 12:20. Those are your hourly counts. And you multiply each of those by 3 in this case for the 20 minutes. And you total each of those hourly counts together to get your total. So this slide's a little wonky. Sorry about that. So that's the one that I recommend. It's not too much trouble, and it's easy to get into the habit. You just set an alarm on your phone, set an alarm on your watch, or set a timer. So at 9:20, just set another timer for an hour. There are a couple of ways to do it, but it's easy to get done, and it doesn't take a lot of time. And if you start at 9:30, if you miss it by 10 minutes, it's not the end of the world either. So don't feel like if you miss it at 9:20 and it's 9:40, don't feel like you can just scrap it all together. Just do another count and see if it makes a difference. The important thing is that you are consistent. So what our recommendations are is if it's just you that's going to be doing these counts, I think the walkthrough count is a great place to start. But recognize that it is less accurate because you don't know how many people are coming into the market from someone might be coming into the market and stay there for 2 hours, and you'll count them 3 times. So recognize that that's a possibility and understand what that means. and understand what the shortcomings of the walkthrough count are, and you can use it. So it's helpful, but it's not as helpful as the others. If you have a volunteers, if you've developed a nice volunteer program, I think a timed count would be awesome and a really great use of volunteer time. So I would recommend that if you could get the volunteer staff together. Um, and if you have like a really easy way to funnel folks into set entrances. So if you have like lots of caution tape or rope or something to keep people from coming in from the ways that you don't want them to come in, I think the full count is worth trying and worth doing. So, think about what resources you have and um, what you can leverage to get um, as much accuracy as you can through this. Oh, I spelled buy wrong too. Cool. So, but you should get these. You should get these clickers. These are a really helpful way to go through a market, count everybody, and not get interrupted while you're doing it. Wait, where was I? You're gonna see someone in your market. You're gonna see someone you know. They want to talk to you for a second, and you're gonna forget completely where you were in the count. Get one of these. It'll save you a lot of aggravation in starting over. So that 5 minute count doesn't take you half an hour, because you're talking to 4 people. So, get one of these. They cost, I think, $6 online. So they're easily worth that. They pay for themselves in no time. So a couple of things things that are important to consider. This is Measuring people is messy. We're unpredictable, and it takes a lot of time to track, and that's okay. So we're not what we're requiring for crowd counts is a requirement, and we do need you to do it, but it's okay if it's hard and it takes some time, and you learn things along the way. Don't be afraid to just do it, and we'll take the numbers. It's not the end of the world if you learned halfway through that you were doing it completely wrong, or for your market. The bottom line is that we're all improving and we're all learning this. So the other thing that I want to sort of encourage you to think about is with these crowd counts, don't chase perfection. The diminishing returns on like a perfect crowd count, the amount of resources it takes to get a perfect crowd count are really high. So don't go chasing that perfect crowd count if you don't have the resources for it, and you need those resources for other things like a good customer experience, or cooking demonstrations, or other pieces of your market's appeal to your customers. So make sure that the bottom line is make sure that whatever you do is consistent, so that you can measure it based on the consistency shows you're doing it the same way. So last week there were 300 people in the market. This week there are 400 people in the market. Both of those counts may have been less accurate than a fully fledged full count, but they still show you that your crowd count, the one that still shows that because you did it the same way both times, there was a good growth from last week. And you can look at predictors for that, whether it's the weather, if there's new product in the market. Tomato season tends to start bringing people out. So, you can start seeing that as well. What changed? Did the word get out? Did they talk about it in the news? Was the weather better, or is corn or tomatoes coming to the market for the first time? And that's what brought people in. So just make sure that your primary number one goal is to choose a crowd count that you can do consistently. And So you don't want to do one version of a crowd count that is wildly inconsistent from another one. You just want to pick one and refine it. Make sure that it is make sure it works within your workflow. So a couple other rules to follow. Count only adults. Babies in wheelchairs do not count as customers. I know I've done it. I've done it because I hated having such a sad looking market on a rainy day. I'll count every single soul that walked through that market. And, my market didn't get any better for it. It was more of an ego trip. It was more for my own ego than it was for anything else. So just count adults. Try to avoid counting people that you've counted twice, or try to avoid counting people twice. So, even if you're doing a walkthrough count, you see the same person in the market, try not to count them again. So, you're doing it at 9:20 and then you see them again at 10:20. You recognize that and you just skip them on the count. That's not going to help you get an accurate count. And the other thing is really just make sure your counting periods are consistent as much as you can. For open air markets, lots of things happen. People get interrupted. There's people, somebody might trip. You have to go pay attention to that, or there may be some argument happening in the parking lot, or the cooking demonstration person just showed up and they're 20 minutes late and you need to get them done, set up. Those are all sorts of things that happen, but try to do your best to be consistent whenever you can. And make sure that you're following the same formula every week. And that's not necessarily, if the formula needs to be changed, if it doesn't seem like it's right, then change the formula. But don't change it every week, if that makes sense. Pick a formula, stick with it, test it. If it doesn't feel right, change it. But don't change it every week. So, what do you do with the data? I believe we have something in FM Tracks for it, and it's worth taking a look at. But here is a master spreadsheet example of the kind of data that you can get and share with your vendors. And I think that this is something that I think most vendors would be really happy to get, and it also shows the value of the market manager position to people trying to make money at the market. Because a lot of this more suspicious vendors are going to be ones who are suspicious of the cost of paying for your time. So you need to show them what the value of that is. And one of the ways you can do that is measure the market for them. It's that way they can see how they're performing compared to the rest of the market. So this is just sort of an example of the month of July that I made out of whole cloth, and just sort of created some scenarios of what would happen, and what one of some of the data points that you can send to people. So ideally, you're getting estimated sales on a weekly basis. It's not necessarily easy to do, but if you can get it, get it. And if you can find a way, I recommend you find it. But you can return on a monthly basis. For example, you can make this spreadsheet and give it back to all the vendors in the market so they can see how the market performed and how they performed in comparison to the market according to their own records. And I think this is a really useful tool. But this is also a really useful tool for yourself, say next year, for the corresponding first weekend of July. You can take a look. In this example, this is a Thursday of the year, or Thursday of July. This is Wednesday, and it's a day before the 4th of July. So you can take a look and see what the holiday impact might have been on this first day of the week compared to the first day of July, the first Wednesday of July in 2 years from now when it's not on the 4th or near the 4th. And it gives you an example of, are people really preparing for the 4th of July with farmers market product? Or the people that come to your market, are they more of a, we're going to get out of town for the 4th kind of group? These are things that are helpful to know. Is there any impact at all about it being so close to the 4th of July? But that's the kind of data that you can refer to this year and next year and for years to come. You can then take these corresponding days and compare them all over the course of 5-10 years and see if there's been growth on this day or what sort of typically happens. And that's the kind of stuff you can do with a sort of a big master spreadsheet of all this data. And it's something that's definitely worth pursuing if you are the market manager and you want to develop good habits for your market. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. My name is James Cochran. I'm covering the Louisville and Cincinnati region of the Farmers Market Support Program, but I am working with I also have regional associates in the Bluegrass region, Western Kentucky, Northeastern Kentucky, and Southeastern Kentucky. And they're all great staff. They're your regional reps. So if you have not talked to any of them, if you have not talked to the one in your region, please reach out to them, because we love farmers markets and we love helping you guys. So please don't hesitate to start the conversation if we haven't already. You see all of our email addresses right there. And thanks for your time. Have a great day.